I'm so delighted to see you again, Nada. Last time I saw you was seems like ages ago, in Oxford, I believe, for school. So thanks for joining, thanks for participating, and great to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. It's always good to see you and to discuss with you. In fact, we had a very interesting conversation in Oxford, and I hope that we can continue.
We can hope to continue, but we can also continue, and that'll be part of this that we're doing right now. And I think a great place to start, of course, would be if you could formally introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you. That would be really valuable.
Yes, my name is Nada Majdalani. I'm the Palestinian Director of EcoPeace Middle East organization. EcoPeace, for those who are not familiar with it, is a regional organization based in Palestine, Israel, and Jordan. And our main mission and focus is on environmental peace building.
And you've got an interesting background. I would say pretty highly focused in environment, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so my connection with environmental issues came at an early stage when I was at school. I've been involved in environmental activities and extracurricular programs. I've been also put into summer camps addressing transboundary environmental and water issues. So I grew up actually with the slogan of environment and water knows no boundaries. As you can imagine, a teenager who is brought up on these concepts and ideas keeps things somewhere in the back of the consciousness. So I studied biology as a BA, and my master's was in environmental assessment and management from the UK. And when I came back to Palestine after my master's, I worked in several organizations and programs related to infrastructure, environmental protection, water provision, and so forth. But it has always been, in the back of my mind that there's something more to give to the environment, from not only from a perspective of hardcore technical issues. I still believed in the slogan that I've learned during my teenager times, and I reached out several times, in fact, to hopefully get a chance to work for EcoPeace. Back then, I knew very well the former director in Palestine. Unfortunately, there was no room to accommodate me at that time. But I don't know, years passed and I evolved. I got more experience. An opportunity was there to actually apply and become a director here. And it's just like a dream came true.
That's pretty awesome. You've kind of answered one of my next questions, but I'm going to ask it again. People talk about what their why is all the time, what their purpose is, and tell me why do you do what you do?
Well, first of all, I did tell you the first part, which is the subconsciousness, but the second part and the more I grow up and the more I get also more aware of my surroundings and the consequences, and particularly for a Palestinian who is, living under harsh conditions because of the conflict and because of the restrictions of the military control over the Palestinian territories, I find myself obliged to basically get involved in such a motion and an organization, because I not only address peace building and environmental issues. For me as a Palestinian, I also address national self-interest for righteous access to water, righteous access to proper services and resources and facilities that would enable the Palestinian people to have appropriate life conditions in the context of a prosperous region. I'm not here only speaking of a Palestinian self-interest, but positioning ourselves in a regional context that shares interest to prosper and grow together in a sustainable way.
Yeah, you see, that's one of the things that caught my attention when I first met Gidon, and then when I met you all at Oxford. It's about water management, but it's about more than just this water and environment. And as we see, even with the craziness of a coronavirus, and we talked about this a little bit, there's no boundaries there. What's on one side of a border impacts the other side of the border, and all anybody wants in the world, in fact, they say the number one thing that fills people's hearts and souls is to belong in community. With that, what's been maybe your biggest challenge? And on the other side, what's been most memorable for you in being involved in EcoPeace?
Let's speak about the challenge first,
Mm-hmm.
And then the memorable event. The most, I guess, challenging is again how we are operating within all this crazy situation that has gone for decades and decades of things not going the right way that we really wanted for our people. It's the conflict that is also impeding our ability to work as a homogeneous group towards a better life for us all. So as much as we try to engage with our communities, with our stakeholders, we empower their voices and we discuss with them the importance of cooperation on environmental and water issues. There remains the impediment of being accused by as being normalizers with the enemy, collaborating with the enemy, treason, and whatsoever, you name it. This is one of the perhaps most difficult moments that we would face at the time where we're trying to do things that we believe are proper, but they are against the currents that are surrounding us at the moment. However, I think the most memorable time for me would be when Gidon and I, the Israeli director, spoke and addressed the UN Security Council. We gave a speech from deep from the heart, and it's not only emotional, that is deep from the heart, but it's also based on evidence, based on facts that we cannot disengage from our shared environment. At that speech, in front of this room full of leaders and world-scale decision makers, Gidon and I sat there and we gave that speech, and surprisingly, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN and the Israeli ambassador to the UN both thanked us for the speech that we gave. This is rather exceptional because you would not easily find that an organization that has a Palestinian-Israeli element gets recognized, at least by a thank you, to basically from the ambassadors or decision makers of our two conflicting countries. So for me, that was really a memorable time that I really hope that it won't be the first and the last, but I think all throughout the journey of EcoPeace, there's, I think every moment and every minute and every activity is memorable and worthwhile and valuable. And we all, as leadership, as staff, we all cherish these moments every time we work together and we make even the tiniest achievement that we make.
Yeah, because tiny achievements turn into big accomplishments, actually.
Yes.
And you know, and full disclosure, I'm a Canadian American Jewish guy, and I so admire, which is why I loved when I heard about EcoPeace. You know, it reminds me of my grandparents, and I'm sure everybody's grandparents probably say the same thing, but my grandparents with a Kiev accent always used to say, you know, as long as you have your health, that's the most important thing, you know?
Yes.
And then they say, and then after that is education, but everything you're doing is about well-being, is about health, and it's the most important thing, and it doesn't distinguish between person from, you know, Jordan to Palestine to Israel to Canada to US, whatever. It just, like the coronavirus is teaching us, just hits across, and we're all in the same league. If I compare it to sports, we're all in the same one planet. With respect to that, so many things are happening technologically so fast. You got coronavirus, you've got injustices that are coming up, obviously here in the States and now around the world for all sorts of things. So people are thinking a little bit more. People have a little more time to think what's really important in their lives and values, which goes back to my grandparents saying that. And how do you view then the future of collaboration? I'm not trying to get you to solve world peace here, but collaboration, including where business leaders who care, which is what we're talking about, recognizing leaders who care, can actually engage and support what you're doing beyond water, maybe into other areas like solar and whatnot, and just collaboration of, you know, we are one planet.
Yeah. So the future of indeed, you brought in, I'm going to go back to this, you brought into the conversation the pandemic and how it has actually changed things. And absolutely, throughout this pandemic, we have really recognized how, again, it's very difficult to disengage from our shared reality and shared environment. And at that point, we had really high hopes that collaboration that we have seen on the level of public health, on the level of exchanging information, of facilitating the works of the public health workers and medical staff would basically advance opening our eyes to the importance of really addressing other transboundary issues, in particular environmental issues and climate change. Climate change is yet another global threat which requires the attention of all people regardless of their location.
Right.
And therefore, we do indeed envision that we can certainly learn from the experience during the pandemic, and learn from the failure of some of the elements that has not enabled appropriate collaboration, and to learn to address them and to bring out solutions to make the possibilities and potentials for collaboration better. For EcoPeace, when we address the larger picture of climate change and cooperation on the levels of course, also water and energy, we've come out with a concept that is called the Water and Energy Nexus that came out in 2017. through a pre-feasibility study that is based on the coal and steel agreement that brought out the European Union from the ashes of World War II towards a more cohesive system that shares prosperity. In that concept, we literally, as you've mentioned, envisioned that it is not the job of EcoPeace to foster this cooperation. It's not the job also of the government to foster this cooperation. It rather needs to be done through business leaders and the business communities, and supported then by a regulatory atmosphere that needs to be created by the government. With this, EcoPeace looks at the exchange of water and energy across the borders and on both sides of the Jordan River as a potential leverage for building trust and improving cooperation on other sectors, not only on water and energy, but to basically foster trust and facilitate further talks and collaboration towards perhaps creating stability and security preservation throughout the region.
Now, are you getting and are you looking and getting engagement with business leaders who care about this?
Absolutely. We are engaging with our authorities and with our business leaders. We are engaging with champions who would potentially be engaged in whatever pilot project we will implement to basically prove the concept. We need leaders who come bluntly and bold, saying that this is the way to move forward. And this is what we're actually working now at the moment.
That's great. Well, I'm going to now welcome in a friend of yours. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello to you. I feel that we know each other. We've met.
We have met. We met in Oxford.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
Which seems like 9,000.
So great to see you again then.
Yes, no kidding. It's like a long time. It seems like forever. But it was a great meeting, and I was so happy that we were able to do that. In fact, at that time, was it Narit? Was she with you as well?
Dalit was with us. It was Nada, myself, and Dalit.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great to see you all, and I'm so happy to see that you're doing great stuff, and to be able to shine a little light on this, through our series as well. So this would be a great time, Yana, to if you could just formally introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you before we get going.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. So I'm Yana Abu-Taleb. I'm the Jordanian co-director of EcoPeace Middle East. I've been with the organization for the past, for more than 10 years, continuously for the past 10 years. And that's a sign that how much I really committed and enjoy doing what I do, basically.
And tell us a little bit about your background. It's interesting. You've been there continually for 10 years, and I love the sound of pride in that statement. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you. Let's start a little bit about your background.
Well, okay. So I studied at the University of Jordan, and I studied archaeology, which is interesting because people ask me, oh, wow, archaeology, and how come you're working in the environmental peace building field? So I never practiced really archaeology, but it's something that is linked to, it has that human aspect. And in a way, it's something I also am passionate for as well. But I really never practiced. So I decided that after doing different jobs, let's say, that I have passion for as well, but I didn't feel I belonged, Mark, in that sense. until I was introduced to EcoPeace. And this is where I felt, oh my God, I can't believe that such an organization exists. And that's what I really want to be doing.
Was that literally, you said, oh my God?
I did say, oh my God, I did, because I never thought, you know, that such an organization would exist in our part of the world. And yeah.
Yeah, that's what impressed me the most, is what you're doing, and the symbolism and the actual great work that you're doing at the same time, I think are both super important. And you kind of answered this a little bit, but I'd like to get a little, maybe even a little deeper, as you know, everybody talks about their why or their purpose. And I'd like to know, why do you do what you do?
I thought about it, Mark, and I really am doing what I'm doing because of passion. Mm-hmm. I'm passionate to peace building. I felt that I was born with it in that sense. But I also feel that we need that change in our region. And we have the people that can make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so they're linked in that way. But it is out of passion.
Yeah, that's great. How did you come to, 10 years ago, that was before Gidon, I believe, right? Or was it when you joined?
Well, I rejoined in 2010, early 2010. Okay. But I was working with the organization back in 2000 until 2003. So that's why I'm saying a little bit more than 10 years, basically. And how I joined, it was by full coincidence. So I know the previous former director, Jordanian director, mm-hmm. and we both have a passion for aviation as well. So one day he came to me. I didn't know that he was also co-directing EcoPeace. And there was a job opening and I was ready to leave my previous job at one of the local airlines here in Amman. And he said to me, why don't you come and join an organization that I'm heading? And I was just stunned to hear from him. And I was like, I literally said, oh my God, and how come I don't know that you're managing such an organization? And this is where it started, believe it or not, you know, if I remember correctly, I started with editing the newsletter that EcoPeace was publishing.
That's great. It's amazing how things evolve. Well, let me ask you, what do you think's been the biggest challenge? Start with the biggest challenge you've had, and then leading towards what might be the most memorable.
Okay, so the biggest challenge has really many challenges, but the biggest challenge is that I always felt that I'm going against the mainstream. So the vast majority of Jordanians, Mark, are against cooperation. And if you think of it in that sense, there are very few that understand the need for cooperation. But there are even fewer people who are willing to do something about it. So, I mean, imagine that. I always felt that because, I mean, we're in a conflict area, and I keep saying that it's the mother of all conflicts. But then we have so much work that we need to do to enable us to move forward with small steps. But then you're going against, you know, the majority. So that has been really the main challenge, let's say, that I've been facing. Memorable, I thought about that, but every second of my work with the organization has been memorable. From, you know, building projects to our internal team meetings, to our directors meetings, to holding events, trips, there's a memory in everything. And even in the challenges, you know, there's a memory in everything that we did and do.
That's where your passion comes into play. It's like starting a startup. And when you're doing a startup, you're working all the time. And the only way you're going to make it happen is if you thrive on those every minute of challenges, thrive on the journey. It's so important. Otherwise, you get burnt out, and then definitely keeps you going. You know, I do understand that there are other opportunities aside from water, like solar power and different things going on where Jordan is actively involved in that part. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. But before that, I mean, I know that we're, as an organization, our main focus is on shared water resources, and but again, water, I see water as a bridge to other issues that we need to be cooperating on. So if you look at water management, you really need to address sustainable agriculture, technology transfer, and build healthy interdependencies in that sense. So I feel that the major two cooperation issues that are our strength at this time is the Jordan Valley Master Plan, that was created around rehabilitating the Jordan River, but achieving sustainable development objectives as well, and working together in the three countries to implement the projects identified in that master plan, but also being creative in how we implement the project. So we don't put all the load, let's say, on the governments to initiate projects, or focus only on leveraging donor money, but we also look at including the private sector, let's say, in contributing to the projects on ground. So that's one of the strengths or the projects that we're working on. But the other is the water energy nexus, because what we're doing is building on the comparative advantages of each of the countries in the region and building healthy interdependencies, because we thought about it for a long time, and being experienced on ground, seeing realities and how things evolve on ground, we needed to really look at what's happening to the arrangements at this time between the three countries. So we looked at the water arrangement and how Jordan is purchasing its additional needed quantities of water from Israel being number one in the world in terms of desalination technology, and thinking how we can create a better partnership between the countries. So from there, building on the comparative advantage of Jordan, having vast areas of ecologically insignificant, let's say, desert areas that can be the regional hub to implement solar energy projects for to meet its own demand, but also to meet the demand of Israel and Palestine in that sense.
Yeah, you see, that's what I find it fascinating is we're not going to solve world peace in this conversation, but the opportunity for business leaders or business leaders who care about the water management, about other energy, about also that economic interdependence or economic dependence can lead to peace, because you care about you're interdependent to make these things happen. So there is a definite connection there. Are business leaders collaborating, participating, seeing that benefit both business-wise and community-wise?
They're definitely very interested. We have business leaders from the three countries and internationally that are really supporting that vision of a water energy nexus, and for implementing the projects, regional projects identified in the master plan. So for all initiatives, because they understand that our power is together. Our businesses can only strive if we really and make so much more income for everyone if we're working together.
Right.
So there's a lot of support and a lot of engagement from private businesses for the initiatives.
That's fantastic to hear, because I think at the end of the day, it's business leaders coming together who care, and then maybe, as Jerry Seinfeld said once, it's a little comedy and levity between all of us also to realize that we're, not to sound cliche-ish, we're all in this together, basically.
Definitely. Definitely. And this is what our work does, Mark. At some point, we feel that on all levels that we're working on, you know, be it the youth sector, be it the different business, private businesses, let's say, or the government as well, they come to realize that we have so much in common and so much to gain if we're working together. So yeah.
So when does everybody all jump in the water together, the Jordan River?
When they feel and understand that it's the only way forward. And we've done it a couple of times. So they do understand that we need to be working together. But it's not easy, because it has to be the right atmosphere. And sometimes, well, most often, and especially at this time, the political atmosphere, unfortunately, does not allow. But people are, especially people who have worked with us, became to understand and support our work. They're willing to engage. They're willing to, with the right atmosphere, continue to work.
That's great. Thank you so much for participating. I'm going to bring Gidon in, hopefully here in a second.
Good seeing you again. How you doing, Mark?
You too. Even though we may not be talking all the time, we're always together.
That's a good feeling.
It is a good feeling. That's as I say all the time, I've read studies on it. The thing that fills our hearts and souls more than anything is belonging to a community. And that's one of the things that I've always been really excited about when I first heard about your what you're doing. I mean, you're doing amazing stuff, and in a world that needs amazing stuff. So let's start with, for those who may not, this is like Gidon, the sequel or something from a few years ago when we first did this. But can you formally introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Gidon Bromberg, and I'm the Israeli co-director of EcoPeace Middle East. In fact, I've been the Israeli co-director since its founding for the last 25 years. I, as a teenager, already wanted to contribute to peace building in Israel and the region, and was looking for the opportunity of how to do that. I was born in Israel, grew up in Australia, but came back to Israel with peace building in mind, and was fortunate to have the opportunity to be offered a scholarship at American University in Washington, D.C. in 93, 94. And that was at the time of the peace treaty negotiations between Israel and Jordan, and the signing of the Oslo Accords between Israelis and Palestinians. And as part of my master's in international environmental law, I asked the question, would peace be good for the environment? And my research concluded that, well, apart from a little bit of lip service, environment wasn't on the peace agenda. And one of the conclusions of my thesis were that, well, perhaps if environmentalists, Israeli, Palestinian, Jordanian, at that time also Egyptian, could come together, maybe we could make sure as a civil society organization to put the environment on the agenda, so that peace would not only be peace between people, but also peace with our shared environment, with our nature. And I was fortunate enough to implement, the recommendation of my thesis, and within a few weeks, met up with some individuals in Washington and asked them, would they fund the first ever gathering of environmentalists from the region that would include Israelis. And I managed to convince one particular individual that said, you know what, if you can organize it, I'll fund it. It was only $20,000. And on the second day of that meeting that took place in December 1994, the decision was made to create EcoPeace. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
And they said it couldn't be done, right?
Hey, well, in fact, some of them came to me and said, some of the people that I met, said to me, Gidon, come back when you're a little bit older. This creating a regional organization is going to take tremendous experience, and you're too young.
Well, in partly my line of work, where I work with a lot of executives and put people in the right positions and whatnot. There's a big difference between years of experience and experiences that you've had, and I think that should be a big distinction. There's some 15-year-old geniuses that can do great stuff too, and so discrimination doesn't work in any aspect, actually, at all for anybody. You kind of told how you became interested in this. I want to know just briefly, like way back when, growing up. I mean, were you picking up and doing recycling as a little kid? What were you thinking back younger days? I mean, you weren't thinking of being the director of EcoPeace Middle East. What were you thinking?
So, as I said, I grew up in Australia, and my parents were fortunate to have a farm in the countryside. Mm-hmm. So most weekends and all summer, we'd spend time in the countryside. So I got a very strong appreciation of nature. That I think led me to being active on environmental issues as a teenager, and I participated in a demonstration to save a third of Tasmania by stopping the building of a dam in a wilderness area, and that was a life-changing experience for me. I was perhaps 17 years old. I went on my own, and it was my first time traveling out of state. And I discovered that activism can really change things on the ground, and there was a combination there. On the one hand, we were thousands of university of young people coming from around Australia to demonstrate, but at the same time there was a legal action in court, and it was really what I saw was the combination of good science, activism, and legal action that actually saved a third of Tasmania until today. And that experience at quite a young age really formed my worldview that an individual can make a difference. In fact, every one of us can make a difference and have the responsibility to make the difference.
Yeah, I agree. So often people like to say, well, how am I going to solve, like solving world peace? How am I going to solve this whole thing? And the problem then is you don't do anything. Versus if, several millions and millions and hundreds of millions and billions of people did one thing a day, what could happen, right? What could happen in the energy and of the world and one community, basically. So that kind of leads me to a couple of things. What do you think's been the biggest challenge as you've grown? Let's start with that and then move towards what do you think's been the most memorable?
So the biggest challenge for EcoPeace is that we're in a state of war. The organization has survived the Second Intifada, Lebanon wars, Gaza wars, terrible violence, bloodshed. That challenge challenges our work every day. We need to wake up the next morning when everything around us looks like it's destroyed, relations have been destroyed, communication have come to a close, and somehow develop a strategy that keeps our issues on the table, that gives hope. And a tremendous challenge, beyond the violence for the organization, is to develop mechanisms, work programs that bring hope back to our peoples, that a better future does await for us, that we are capable of living together in security, in justice, in a manner where there's mutual respect, and this constant violence and voices of anger are a tremendous challenge in our work. As we go through those challenges, of course, the most wonderful, positive and motivating aspect of our work is the success that we've achieved despite those challenges. Right. So, at EcoPeace, we stopped the wall being built, and preserving what became to be registered as a World Heritage Site between Israel and Palestine. We convinced our governments to allow fresh water to flow again down the River Jordan, where it hadn't flowed for 49 years. We helped bring investments and finalizing the first modern sewage treatment plant in Gaza, which has helped advance water and sanitation security for not only 2 million people in Gaza, but for the whole region. So we have lots of success that we can speak to, but perhaps the issue that keeps me the most motivated and inspired is seeing the change of attitude, mostly with young people. That's what I get the most satisfaction from. Right. Because I really feel that young people have open minds, they're willing to listen. They're not satisfied with the status quo, right, almost by definition. Right. And therefore, all the stereotypes are relatively easy to overcome with young people. And then you see the coin drop, with the understanding that, the political borders are man-made. Perhaps the most important borders are nature's borders, are our watershed. And if we're going to protect our watershed, then clearly we need to work with everyone that lives in that watershed.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and it kind of leads to, economic interdependence. The same way, environment and peace come together, as you said. Economic interdependence, certainly doesn't hurt. Having peace also, if nothing else, I can actually work with these people. How are you finding collaboration between business leaders who care? Because we're finding very much that it really is up to a lot of business leaders to care about the well-being of community in general, which includes water, energy, etc. How are you finding collaboration and interest in that is good for business and it's good for community to be involved?
Absolutely. So at EcoPeace, we program our activities reaching out to the business community. We well understand that the business community tends to be very rational, less emotional. Sadly, much of our region here is so over-emotional. But the business community is very rational. They very well understand that working together makes business sense, and taking care. So this is not across the board, but the more progressive businesses also understand that taking care of the environment also makes critical business sense. So we reach out. In fact, we've developed a program that we're extremely excited about, which is a water energy nexus. So it's actually taking the experience of Europe in creating a coal and steel agreement after World War II, and understanding the coal and steel of the Levant that's relevant for this century is actually harnessing the sun and the sea. And that's all being done presently through the business community. The business community is heavily invested today in green, in solar energy production. The business community is heavily invested in desalination. What's unique about our work is to put those players together, to bring together those investors, particularly in Jordan, which has the comparative advantage because of its vast desert areas, to produce large-scale renewable and sell that electricity to Israel and Palestine, and then work with the business community in Israel, which is already heavily invested in desalination, more interest in Gaza for desalination, use renewable energy coming from Jordan to desalinate and then sell water back. And we see the excitement and the leadership of the business community. They are playing a critical role in helping us create the political will needed from our governments to see that a healthy interdependency actually created on the ground.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That which is why we're doing this whole series about leaders who care, where you can actually care and still have a profitable business at the same time. So I think you're leading a great effort.